barriers to getting healthy, and there are psychological barriers. And that's why, you may have heard of New Start. New Start has all those as an acronym for many good things. But Full Power is like New Start with those extras in it there. But all come from, I would say, both divine and secular sources, you might say, when I put it that way. Yeah, New Start on steroids. Did I tell you that before? It's New Start on steroids, but only without steroids, just to be clear. So, what did we learn from our last session? There's hope. Thank you, there is hope. Yeah, that's a very good point, because there's a book written by Dr. Bruce Perry, and I looked him up because Dr. Gabor Mate quotes Dr. Bruce Perry a lot. And Dr. Bruce Perry is a neurobiologist, and he wrote a book with Oprah Winfrey, who, as you may know, had her life of abuse when she was younger, and she had to go through a lot of stuff. And so she wrote it with Dr. Bruce Perry, and a lot of times, and they're quoting the problems that some people have with other people. And the question often that comes up is, what's wrong with you? Why are you so stupid? Why are you doing this stuff? You know it's not good for you. What's wrong with you? And so instead of saying that, Dr. Bruce Perry says, what happened to you? Because what happened to you created your physiology. And that's why the principle is our bodies and our minds are so interconnected. You can't have one without the other. And so if we have an emotional dearth of emotional growth and whatnot, it will affect our bodies. And so Dr. Bruce Perry with Oprah Winfrey is kind of getting at this, that what happened to you, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault that you got abused when you were 2 years old or 5 years old or whatever it was. It wasn't your fault. But because of that, your brain developed in a different way than another kind of a brain. And I'm talking about the dopamine receptors. And so that's why I think we should not be pointing accusing fingers at people who have problems, because a lot of it's not their doing. Now, of course, we add on to it ourselves, and we make it our doing in the end. But in the end, I don't mean that. We don't make it our doing in the end, like it's our fault. It starts off with it's like people running a race, and they start at the starting line, but then there's two of them that have to start 20 feet behind, and they're like that their whole lives, and that's not their fault, but they're trying their best. So I think this is a reason to have compassion on people who are addicts and they're suffering and they're whatever they're doing, because we have our issues too, right? We all got something. This is the world that we live in. So yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else? What did you get from last session? Yeah. Mm. Mm. Indeed. Yeah. Yeah, nice way to put it. Just in case other people didn't hear, he's talking about basically two parts of our brain are always fighting at each other all the time. The lower versus the higher, the emotional brain versus the rational brain. And obviously what I just said and what you just said is an oversimplistic view of what's really happening in our brains, which are very nuanced in many ways. But really, how we handle that battle between the lower self and the higher self really determines our success in life. Because the biggest battle that we fight is a battle against the self. And often that really means it's the cerebral cortex against the limbic system, in a sense. I want to be more physiological about it. And often, have you ever had an argument with a child, like a 5-year-old child, who's really, really angry, and you try to reason with them? Does that ever work? It doesn't work. You know why? Never mind that their brains aren't developed for rational thought to develop when they're 12 or 13, but when you're angry or you feel threatened, the most active part of your brain is in the limbic system, especially the amygdala. And when the amygdala is activated, it actually cuts down the communication to the cerebral cortex, which is the rational part of the brain. So in a sense, I'm exaggerating, it shuts off rationality. That's why you don't argue with an angry person, because that part of their brain is shut down for those 10 minutes. You always wait until that settled down. And when I say it settled down, physiologically, settling down really means that the communication starts up again between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. And so, yes, please. Indeed. And if you want to be Christian about it, really, flesh versus the spirit. There's a book in the Bible called Romans. Chapter 7 of that book talks about fighting. The things I want to do, I don't do. I want to do them, but I don't do them. The things I don't want to do, that's what I do. And this battle is going on. And so, yeah, there's an age-old, ancient wisdom on this subject, because what I'm talking about here is really universal. It's just human, just being human. That's what we got to deal with. Anyway, on to the next thing. So I read that to you already, and we talked about the goal that helps us to be distracted from the temptations. Maybe I can put it this way. Non-addictive foods are designed by nature, but addictive foods are designed by people or companies or corporations or manufacturers. Now, if you want to say, well, what should be the principle, the rule that I go by? Should I watch for my carbs or should I watch for the sugars? No, just watch for processed versus unprocessed. That's all. That simplifies it. Processed food can become, and most often is, addictive food. And that was created by human beings, extracting from nature. But natural foods like a carrot, like an almond, like an apple, these are grown by nature and they're not addictive. And so that'll help us a little bit there. Now let me just go on here. You love you? Oh, good. Almonds are good. Yeah. I have about 7 every morning. So here's kind of, you look at the plate here, you got fruits and vegetables, a quarter of the plate, drink water on the side there. No, a half of the plate is fruit and vegetables. So this is to represent the kind of proportion of food we can eat in the daytime. And then plant proteins. We don't need animal proteins to live. No animal needs to die for us to be healthy. And so you have beans, you have almonds, you have seeds and stuff. And then whole grains. You know, you have your, all kinds of grains anyway. I usually have oats and pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds and sunflower seeds and all that kind of stuff. Every morning I put that over whatever I'm having. Usually it's fruit or something like that. So you ready for the next step? It's not that one. It's the O. We've already done these ones already. So, yeah. Mm. Couple of things to say. One is the general and one is the individual. If you as an individual have a reaction to a particular kind of grain, well, yeah, you can deal with that and just not have it. Generally speaking, for the general population, grains are good. Now, the next question comes, isn't the soil depleted and, don't they put fertilizer on it and stuff like that? And part of the answer is yes, but it really depends on where the soil is, because you just can't say, oh, soil's depleted, because some places it's not depleted, and some places it is. So you really want to be scientific about it, you got to look at the soil. But whenever they do these studies on which foods are good for you and which foods, what they do for you, they're doing studies from the soil which is even depleted, and they are still better for you. Now, for example, let's just say depleted soil produces a depleted grain, and okay, fine. Or foods that are grown have pesticides. So, okay, should we therefore ignore the foods? Now, take that, which is negative. There's some positive in there, but you got the negative on it. Now, compare that to a chocolate bar. Now, if you take the volume per cubic centimeter, let's say, cubic centimeter, on the grains which have either pesticides or come from depleted soil, and you take what is unhealthy there, and you weigh it out, and then you weigh out that against the poisons that are in a chocolate bar. I'm not talking about dark chocolate that you grow from cacao and stuff like that. A chocolate bar, Hershey's chocolate bar, the worst. Hershey's and Nielsen, worst. If you're going to have chocolate, don't have Hershey's, don't have Nestle's. Don't go there. Have other kind of stuff. It's less, I'm not saying it's healthy, it's just less harmful. Anyway, so now in the chocolate bar, 100% of every cubic centimeter of the chocolate bar is poison. 100%. But in the grain, it's not 100%. So the grain is still better. So then you put this to the test. So when they put this to the test, you get your grains or whatever foods may have come from some, like pesticide soil or whatever it may be. And then you run people through the test, 100 people, and you divide them in half, and 50 go for the grains which come from poor soil, and the other 50 go for more chocolate bars. Who's going to be more healthy? It's always this group that has the grains, even though it comes from maybe depleted soil and doesn't have enough nutrients. It's still better than processed food. It's still better. And it's shown in the studies that come out. And so, we can be worried about the pesticides and all that stuff and the depleted soil, but the grains and the whole foods that come from that are what is studied in these studies. And they still come up with these conclusions that whole foods, plant-based, is still better for you. Way, 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 way better. So that would be part of my answer. I mean, I don't know all the answer, but that would be part of it there anyway. Anybody else before we go on? Yeah. Because of that, which is true, we're left with having to make decisions on what grade of quality we want to accept. If you want the best, grow your own food in your own garden. That would be the best. Second best, go to the farmer's market. Second best. And then do the best you can. This is all we can do the best that we can. And so, some of us, if we're stuck with Roundup on our food and growing our crops, I'm sorry, for one, but it's still better than a chocolate bar. It's still better than white flour muffin. It's still better than potato chips. That's what I'm saying. It's still better for us. And so, there's lots of stuff you can go back and forth, but I'm now thinking of Dr. T. Colin Campbell. 60 years he spent in nutrition. And he says, even with the pesticides, even with the depleted soil, you're still better off eating whole foods plant-based than by going by manufactured food. You're still better off. So anyway, that's a little bit for you on that one. So now a little bit of the psychology here. Right now we're looking at in the workbook, page 11 and 12 and 13. So if you're writing notes in your workbook, that's where we are. right now, and we have this is on the top of page, I think it's page 11. Find your superpower, fulfill your purpose. Identifying my strengths helps me to zero in on my higher purpose. That right there is worth $1 million, just to say that. Identifying my strengths helps me zero in on my higher purpose. And that, in turn, has cascading effects on everything else in my life. A sense of purpose gives me the motive power to live out the other principles of body, mind, vitality. A sense of purpose empowers me to resist self-sabotaging behaviors and push through the tough times. Finding my superpower, therefore, is the foundation of life mastery. And so that would be on the page, on the top of page 11, underneath this blank space for you to write notes. So we'll now talk about the rest. So Dr. Mother Nature prescribes finding your purpose, and just know that we are made for more. So here's the opening test question. Can you fill in the blanks? I blank so that people can blank. Can you fill in that sentence? I fix bicycles so people can ride safely. I cook healthy meals so that people can feel stronger. I teach children so that children can grow up with life mastery. So what is it for you? And if you can't fill that sentence in, then I've got good news. Your future will be better than your past once you can fill that in. And that is part of the answer to fighting these cravings and these addictions that we have for sugar, salt, and fat, which are in the end going to kill us. So we'll start there. Oh, well, look at that. Anybody ever seen Peter Pan before? I was 6 years old. I was living in Germany at the time. My father's in the Air Force. And we're transferred to Germany. And he would take us to the movie theater at the base, at the Canadian Armed Forces base. And I remember watching Peter Pan. And Peter Pan, you got to admit, that guy had skills. He could fly. He never grew older. And I always loved it when he flew around Captain Hook. And Captain Hook was so scary, but Peter Pan wasn't afraid of him. When the movie got over, and I had to leave the theater, the world was a bleak world. I wished I was back in Never Never Land with Peter Pan. And I remember feeling, it was almost depressing that real life didn't have these superheroes like Peter Pan. And so many more of them, like Superman. I grew up reading Superman comics, and I wished I could be strong like Superman. Well, you know what? This feeling of missing out, why can't I be like Superman? Why can't I be like Peter Pan? And you just named the superhero, whatever it is of your childhood. Why can't I be like that? The fact is, when we feel like we're missing out on those things, that actually has consequences in our bodies. It actually creates something negative in our bodies for our long-term health. I don't know if you know this lady. Her name is Stephanie Germanotta. Ever heard of her? You might know her as Lady Gaga. And she sang a song called Shallow from A Star Is Born. And on YouTube, when I last looked it up, 1.8 billion views on the song. Here are some of the words. Tell me something, girl. Are you happy in this modern world? Or do you need more? Is there something else you're searching for? Tell me something, boy. Aren't you tired of trying to fill that void? Or do you need more? She seemed to get it, that people have this emptiness inside. And I don't know how much she got, but when we have this emptiness inside, looking for more, looking to be like Superman or Peter Pan or some famous whatever, there's something that happens inside of us, this thirst for more. And sometimes we satisfy that thirst with risky behaviors, just to feel alive again. Now, look at those pictures there, and can you see them from where you are? I guess they're kind of small. But tell me, do you recognize any of them? Yeah? What do they have in common? They're all women. That's one thing. Yeah, they are. They're all singers. Yes. Pardon? They're all they're all smiling. Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh. They're all famous. They're all singers. They're not all singers because Kelly Osbourne is not a great singer. I don't know. I don't know. Her dad was a great, well, when I say great, I mean popular singer. Ozzy Osbourne, who I knew as a teenager. Not personally, mind you. So there's something else that these ladies have in common that most people do not know. And what they have in common is this lady. This lady's named Linda Perry. And Linda Perry is a writer, singer, and record producer. And she has produced and wrote the songs that all those other 10 ladies sing. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And every single one of those ladies, Linda Perry has helped produce and send them into the stratosphere of popularity in their music because she produces their songs in many cases. Now, so Linda Perry caught my attention because she was once the lead singer of a group called Four Non-Blondes. And she wrote a song, or she sang the song, which also has 1 billion hits on, 1.8 billion, probably more by now, on YouTube. And here's what she wrote. And here's what she sang. And she was 25 years old when she sang it. 25 years in my life is still trying to get up that great big hill of hope for a destination. So after 25 years, she still hadn't worked it out yet. Now, it's interesting that that lady happened to sing the same kind of songs that Bono from U2 sang, or even going way back to the 70s, Neil Diamond. We're singing about, I'm lost, and I'm looking for something. And it just seems in pop culture, the songs that become popular are the songs that tell us that these songs resonate with the population around us. In other words, people are looking for something else that they don't have. It's actually a spiritual emptiness, and they don't even know it. And so we come back to this guy again. This guy is trying to fill up his emptiness with something called alcohol. Well, what is it for you? What is it for your family members or your friends or whatever it may be? Well, it dawns on him maybe someday, I've been living my life day after day, and I've been practicing self-sabotaging behavior for years. For years. For years, I've been killing myself slowly. Didn't want to. And so one day I write this in the book. I get out of the shower and look in the mirror and look at my body. And I think my body is the cross between a marshmallow and a wheelbarrow. No, and a barrel. So a marshmallow marries a barrel, and they have me. And that's what I look like. And I'm thinking, what caused my body to have the shape that it had? It was the last 50 pizzas that I ate. It was the last 50 bags of potato chips that I ate. It was it's the last this, and it all adds up. One, not going to kill you. Even 100 may not kill you. But you add this to it and you add that to it, we're slowly killing ourselves. Just suicide by the fork and by the installment plan type of thing. And so this guy, it dawns on him that maybe that's what he's been doing. And so we need to help him out. And so the first place to start is, what is your sense of purpose in life? Because without that, nothing else is going to help you. And so, do you feel like what you do and who you are matters? Do you feel that what you do and who you are really matters in this world? Or do you have a sense that your actions are meaningful? Do you have a sense that your actions contribute or benefit something that you care about? Because if you do, that's your sense of purpose. And that will empower you. That will actually make you powerful more than someone who doesn't have that sense of purpose. Now, according to research, having a sense of purpose staves off stress. When we have stress, it builds up a hormone called what? Those of you who know, cortisol. Cortisol relates to inflammation. Inflammation is a precursor to a lot of diseases. So having a sense of purpose can actually reduce our diseases when you take a look at all the interim cause and effect things in between. And so also having a sense of purpose can help you channel challenges toward learning and growth. You have challenges in life? That's okay, we all do. But use those challenges to grow. It fuels hope and optimism, which means it increases like hormones in our bodies, like say dopamine and oxytocin, which is like called the happiness hormone, or endorphins, which is the hormone that can keep us going strong even though things are painful, endorphins. And so these are hormones that can be created simply by having a sense of where you know you're going in life. That really helps. And so our thinking helps our bodies to be strong and fit, just how we think. And then it gives you greater health and longevity. Of course it would. Older adults who report a sense of purpose in life experience less functional decline, less cognitive and memory impairment, and lower risk of Alzheimer's disease, of all things. Just having a sense of purpose helps stave off Alzheimer's disease. People with greater purpose make healthier life choices like exercise and more nutritious eating. And they engage in more preventative behaviors like cholesterol tests and cancer screenings, etc. Why? Because they care. They care enough to want to be healthy so they can do their thing. What's your thing? That's the question. In short, a sense of purpose is very strongly associated with mental and physical well-being. So what's your purpose? And that's why it's the core to most scientific definitions as of what it means to be happy in life. So happiness in life, confidence in life, life satisfaction includes a sense of purpose. That, in turn, helps us to be healthier and to have less disease. Do you see the connection there? Sometimes we don't think they're so far apart, but one thing affects the other, affects the other, affects the other, and that means you have lower heart attack risk because you have a sense of purpose. So I'm putting these things together, the domino effect, as we go along. As a matter of fact, research even shows that a sense of purpose is worth up to 7 more years of life, even. Can you imagine? You just live 7 years longer. Why? Because you don't want to die. You got things to do. And that actually helps you live longer. That's just amazing. What's this lady saying? You're on the airplane? Yeah. In the unfortunate case of, no, not unfortunate, the unlikely case of like crashing or something, the oxygen mask will come down. And your job is to make sure that you help everybody around you first and help your children. Is that your job? They tell you what appears to be selfish. Put on your own oxygen mask first. Is that right? Okay. And then help your children. All right, thank you for that. So the idea here, though, is that when we take care of ourselves, don't feel guilty. Take care of yourself so that you can be of service to other people. But take care of yourself. Don't burn out for other people. We need you to be alive and well. And we don't mind being helped by you as you use your gifts and talents to minister to, say, us. But just remember, take care of yourself. Love yourself enough to eat right and take care of your body so you can be energetic and then live your sense of purpose. And that's why we say don't even think of losing weight until you figured out your superpower, which will help you figure out your sense of purpose. So what's your superpower? Well, we're going to talk about that. The principle is before it happens in the body, it happens in the brain. So let's get our brain working. Our brain will work better when we have a focus, a positive focus. Knowing what your place is in life will help. As a matter of fact, here's a quote written by a lady named Ellen G. White. She wrote this a long time ago. The specific place appointed us in life is determined by our capabilities. So what are you good at? What do other people say about you when you do something and they like it and it helps them? What is that? That helps. That helps to kind of zero in. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie or read the book called Where'd You Go, Bernadette? Anybody ever heard of this story? This used to be a big novel turned into a movie. And it's a story about Bernadette, who is very talented. She was an architect, very rich and successful architect. And she designed a building, and the story begins with the celebration of the sale of that building. And a big billionaire guy, he buys the building and the property, and they have a big celebration. She took 3 years to design the building. It's a beautiful building. And the billionaire guy, he smashes it all down and makes a parking lot out of it. She's devastated. She put 3 years of her life into designing that building as an architect. And it causes her to go a little bit crazy. And so she becomes dysfunctional. And she loses her sense of purpose. And she disappears. Hence the name of the story, Where'd You Go, Bernadette? You're gone. And so the husband and the daughter, who love their wife and mother, are looking all over the world for her. And they recognize that she's kind of emotionally sick in some ways, but they eventually find her in the South Pole, designing another building to work in the South Pole for a particular purpose. And when they meet, the mother and the wife is so happy and so confident as that she's well again. And they embrace, and that's the end of the story when they finally find her. And most people don't like the story because it's not a great heroic kind of thing. But to me, it's a profound lesson. When you have a sense of your purpose, it will stave off psychological disease. It staves off depression. It staves off even dysfunction. Having a sense of what your purpose is in life helps in 100 other areas, including and especially your health. What do you think of that? Whenever I ask people about this story or the movie, I think I've asked this question to about 10 audiences, total of maybe 500 people. Only one person has ever seen it. But I saw it. And I looked at the critics, the people who critiqued the story, and one of them says, if you're an artist, artists have to art, using art as a verb. If you have a talent in some area, and it can be used to be a blessing to others, and you're not using it, you're going to go down in your competency. You're going to go down in your emotional strength. You're going to go down. You were given that talent to use, to be a blessing to others, and the world needs you. That's why you're significant. That's why you're important. So when you figure that out and then you use that, there is where one of the secrets are. And so I'm going to give to you a poem. It's got 4 lines. I've used it a lot in leadership training over the years. I'll have a training in the afternoon, people coming in, and you can answer these questions. The poem is really 4 questions. It could be applied to a business, to a church, or to yourself as an individual, or to anything we're looking for guidance. Here's the poem. I call it the strategy poem. Number 1, where am I now? Number 2, where do I want to go? Where do I go? Number 3, how do I get there? Number 4, how do I know? Where I am now is take an assessment of my satisfaction in life, my resources, people around me. It's just do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. All that's where I am now. Where do I go? In other words, what's my goal in life? So it rhymes. Where I am now, where do I go? How do I get there? That's your strategy. That's, for example, full power. Putting principles into place so you can get to where you want to go. And how do I know? That's the measurements. That's the signpost along the way. If you're trying to lose weight, want to lose 50 pounds, then signpost number 1 might be, oh, I got 5 pounds. Now I got 10 pounds. Now I got 50. So you're measuring things along the way with the strategy that you have. And that's what full power helps you to do. You go from where I am now to where I want to go, and then the full power plan for 28 days, should you choose to accept it, is your strategy to get there. So when people are fueled by this, the sense of where they want to go, that it's a fuel. It's like oxygen to a fire type of thing. It's easier to practice health principles. You live longer. You have more confidence. You have less disease. So how do you find your superpower? To what degree are you living your life of purpose? You find your sense of purpose by identifying your superpower. So what is it? On page 12 of your workbook, you can answer those 10 questions. And those 10 questions are basically saying, to what degree are you using your superpower and living a life of purpose? And then some people will say, how can I answer these questions? I don't even know what my purpose is. So the very next page, there it is. The very next page is, it's in the book and it's also in the workbook. I can send it to you by email if you don't want to buy the book or the workbook. Here are questions you could ask yourself so that you can figure out what is your sense of purpose. What is your strengths and your gifts and your talents, your capabilities? What is that? Because whatever that is for you, that's what's going to give you your superpower. It may not be flying like Peter Pan or Superman, but I guarantee you it will be a superpower and you will be able to use it and it'll make you confident. It'll change how you view life. It'll make you happier. It'll take away it may take away depression or it will lower depression as we go along. So here's some of the questions. My daily activities were driven by a sense of purpose. To what degree on a scale of 1 to 10? I'm not going to read them all, just some. I daily used at least one of my top strengths or talents in this last week. I daily found myself in a state of flow, completely absorbed in what I was doing. Musicians get this. Sports people get this. People who are just engaged and they don't even know the time has passed by. What are you doing during those times? That could be part of your purpose and your superpower. So I'm going to go through these very quickly. Not going to read them anymore. You can take a look at the workbook. Don't want to spend too much time on that. But the idea is that it will help you get to where you want to go. So I took this picture on the ferry. Used to travel the ferry a lot from Vancouver to Vancouver Island. And it's a sunrise. And I thought I'd use that picture as a background for these words. Addictions and depression are symptoms sometimes alleviated by a sense of purpose. Your sense of purpose will come into focus by discovering and using your gifts and talents. Now, continuing with a metaphor here, compassion is a drug, metaphorically, that when administered through your gifts and talents will heal the world. When you have these strengths, these gifts, and these talents, whatever they are, it could be leadership, it could be helping, it could be music, it could be teaching, it could be hospitality, it could be cooking, it could be creative design, it could be hospitality, it could be anything. You have a talent. If you put that to use, if you put that to use in helping others, in a sense, that's what your Creator wants you to do to heal the world around you. That's why we need to be using our talents and our gifts. When you heal the world, though, you heal yourself. Because we all need healing of one kind or another. And so there's this guy who produced this movie called Heaven is for Real. Ever seen this movie? Called Heaven is for Real. It's based on a true story. The guy who did that movie also did this movie, Miracles from Heaven with Jennifer Garner. He also did this one for Christmas, animals following toward finding the birth of Jesus. Here's the guy who did those movies. His name is Devon Franklin, and he wrote a book called The Hollywood Commandments. I read 2 of his 3 books. Happens to be a Seventh-day Adventist, interviewed by Oprah Winfrey and all that. And so he writes these words: how many people have snoozed away their destiny? I refuse to be less than I was created to be. So he believes in a creator. And he believes that he was given a sense of purpose to make a difference in this world, to make a difference in his family and his friends and wherever he lives. So he's saying, you exist for a reason. Find out what it is. It'll make you stronger. What's your reason for existence? Now, does this remind you of anything? Yeah, the blue zone. So we put this up on the screen the other night, maybe even the first night too. The blue zones are the places in the world where people live the longest and the people are the healthiest. That's the blue zones. And these are the 5 original ones. And they found that last time I put that up, we said most of those people are on a vegetarian diet. A little bit of meat, but mostly whole foods, plant-based. But something else they all had in common was a sense of purpose. And so here's this guy, he's 84 years old. He's on the cover of National Geographic. And he's one of these blue zone guys who eats, good food and he exercises. And it says in the blue zones, they study showed 4 major factors in their longevity. In other words, how long they lived. They exercise regularly. They ate a plant-based diet. They took off a day of work off each week. And look at the 4th one. Who would have thought? They had a sense of purpose. Like these people in the blue zones, they had this sense of purpose. So here he is now getting ready for a triathlon at age 84. A triathlon. What's a triathlon? It's a marathon, it's swimming a mile, and it's also riding a bike for, 100 miles or something like that. You do all 3 of those. And he's training for that at the age of 84. You ask him, what makes you go? And he'll say, ikigai. How many have ever heard of ikigai? Yeah, a few of you had. Ikigai. It's a Japanese word for, what's it for? It's the reason to get up in the morning. It's the reason for being. It's that which makes life full. It's life worth. It's your reason for living. It's what makes life worth living. It's a process that makes you blossom. Your ikigai is, in a sense, your purpose. And so, how do you know what your ikigai is? Because that seems to be what keeps, especially the people in Okinawa at the time, it keeps them going and living so long. Number 1, doing what you love. Number 2, doing what you're good at, your talents. Number 3, doing what the world needs, your vocation. You put all these together, and you got yourself your ikigai, or your purpose. What you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. You put all that together, you got yourself a life of purpose. You found your place in this world. So how strong is your sense of purpose? That's the big question for tonight. How strong is your sense of purpose? Because without it, we lose so much. But with it, we gain so much. Well, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. Your inner genius, tapping into your smarts. Albert Einstein, one of my heroes, says, at least he's quoted as saying, everybody is a genius. It's not a matter of whether you're smart or not. It's a matter of how you are smart. Because you may be smart in a way that somebody else is not smart. And so Albert Einstein, who is known to be the genius in the world, he says everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will go through its whole life believing it's stupid. Some people are born to do things that other people say they should be doing something else. And so they try to do that something else and they feel stupid. But they weren't born to do that. What were you born to do? If you were born, and using the metaphor here, if you're born a fish, don't try and climb trees, swim. If you're born as an eagle, don't try and swim underwater, fly. You know what I'm saying? So what were you born to do? And then if you're not doing it, you're going to feel stupid for the rest of your life. And that's just a poor way to live. That's a poor way to live. Trying to please the world around you. Don't be molded by this world around you. Be transformed by the inner workings of your mind and have your sense of purpose. And so that place in life appointed to us is determined by our capabilities, and that helps us with our sense of purpose. And it has to do with how you're gifted. Not whether you're gifted, but how you're gifted. Because every one of you, everyone, young and old, is gifted with something, some ability that you have that helps other people. When you put that to use, good stuff starts to happen. Does this picture remind you of anything? Those of you who happen to read the Bible might recognize this as a picture from the parable of the talents. I didn't know when I was a young man that this parable actually ever existed. But I do remember one time when I was 19, 20 years old, not having a sense of purpose. And because I didn't have a sense of purpose, I just followed all the pleasures in life, and I just lived from one pleasure point to the next and feeling empty afterwards all the time. So I go away to a college called Burman University. I leave my family in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I go there, and I'm feeling empty and lost and wondering why I'm left home. And I read this parable. And I'm feeling unhappy, wondering what life is all about. And when I read this parable, there's a sentence in the story of the parable which says, share in your master's happiness. I thought, aha, happiness. That's the word that's what I want, is that happiness. That's what I want. How do I get it? So I went back to the first part of that story, the parable, and it turns out to be this rich guy. They call him a master. He's like a CEO of a corporation, and he's really rich, and he gives money to his employees, and then he goes and he says, I'm going to come back in a little while, but I want you to put this to use. That money was called talents. Because back in those days, 2,000 years ago, this ancient wisdom parable, as told by a man named Jesus Christ, they had talents as a name for money. And one talent, depending on what country you were in or what century you were in, but one talent was a lot of weight, and it was like the equivalent to 18 years of wages of someone getting minimum wage, one talent. And so these guys in the parable were given 5 talents and 2 talents and 1 talent. And so the guys that used their talents and put them to work were the ones that when the master came back says, well done, you've done a good job with that. And then he says, come in, enter into my happiness. And that was what caught my attention. So I thought to myself, I'm not happy. And this seems to be giving an answer here about how to have happiness. How do I get it? I get it by being one of those 2 guys and taking whatever talents that I have and putting them to work. The problem was, I didn't have any talents. What am I going to do? And some of you might think you don't have any talents. And if you know somebody in your life who says they don't have any talents, you can do what I ended up doing. Because I had nobody around me at the time who I knew, but I thought, what are my talents? Because whatever they were, if I used them, I'd end up with happiness. And that was my simple mind at work. Well, since I didn't have any talents, I thought, how am I going to find out if I actually do? So I went back in my memory, sitting on my dormitory bed, thinking of a time that maybe I got a compliment from somebody. And maybe the compliment that I got would indicate that I had used a talent and that the compliment helped me to understand and identify a talent that maybe I had. So that was my philosophy. That was my thinking anyway. And so I thought I had to go back a long ways in my memory to get a compliment. Well, I remember, and it had to be my mother. Mother, thank God for mothers. My mother, I was about 15 years old, I guess, and I was on the telephone, which was attached to the wall, so you couldn't go very far. And I was talking to my girlfriend, and I had given her a ring, which was like a friendship ring, which had 4 rings that were interlocking into a puzzle. And if the ring fell apart, you had to know how to put the ring back together again. It was actually a gift I received from my father, who came from Egypt, and he got it in Egypt, so it was a special ring. So I gave that to my girlfriend while we were going out together, and she dropped it, and well, she was cooking or something, and she called me up, and she says, I dropped the ring, I'm sorry, it's all come apart, how do I put it together? And so I am telling her on the phone how to put the ring back together. And my mother is listening. After I hang up the phone, my mother says to me, you should be a teacher. And I said, why? Never thought of that. She said, because you just helped her put the ring back together, and you didn't even have it in front of you. It was all from your head. And I said, well, anybody can do that. And she said, I can't. Well, here I am thinking about, okay, that was when I was 15, and now I'm 20 years old, and I'm trying to think, what's my talent? Well, maybe my mother could see something in me that I could not see. So maybe I should teach something. What do I teach? I don't know. So I thought of my grandmother, who gave me a talent, gave me a compliment for what I thought was a talent. She said to me, you should be a writer. I said, Grandma, I never thought of it. I was 16 maybe. I never thought of writing was hard work. I didn't want to be a writer. But she says, you should be a writer. I said, why? She said, do you remember when your parents would go out and they'd leave you in charge of your younger children, your siblings? Yeah, I'm the oldest of 4, and I have 2 brothers and a sister, and they're younger than me. And I said, yeah, I used to be a babysitter for my siblings. And she said to me, what did you do when they didn't behave? I said, well, I felt like beating them up. But you didn't, did you? No, because I knew that would have long-term ramifications for family dynamics. I didn't really say it that way. She said, what did you do? I said, well, I didn't want to hurt them, but they needed to go to bed, and I couldn't get them to go to bed. I mean, I could wrestle them down and force them. So instead what I did is I wrote up a non-compliance report and submitted it to administration when they got home, my parents. And I wrote them up. I said, my brother didn't do this, and my sister didn't do this. And my grandmother, she didn't say it in these words, but she kind of said, that's not normal. That's just not a normal thing to do, to write like that. But you thought to express yourself in writing. And my grandmother, she's a wise woman. So here I am at 20 years old thinking back on that compliment, that admonishment, you should be a writer. And I'm comparing that to my mother who says you should be a teacher. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I should teach through writing. Maybe that's what I should do. And then I go back to that parable and figure if that's a talent, I don't know that it is, but if it is, I should use it and then see if I get happy. That was kind of my philosophy. So I thought, okay, what do I do? Here I am on a college campus at Burman University in Alberta, and it's not even time for the school to begin. I'm here in August, and the kids haven't come back to start the new semester. And so I go to a guy whose name is Eric Raja, who happened to be the campus of activities coordinator or something. And so I said to Eric, do you need any writing done? Now here's the interesting part. I read the parable sitting on my bed, and when I had this thought about teaching and writing from my mother and my grandmother, and that being a talent, and that should lead to happiness, I closed the book, and then I left and I went to do it. I didn't just say, oh, that's a good theory. I acted on it. So then I knock on the door, in the office door of the administration building. Eric Raja is there. I say, Eric, do you need any writing done? He says, no, but maybe Bev Tates needs some writing done because she is the sponsor for the newspaper called the Aurora newspaper. And so I go there and visit her, and she says, yeah, I do need writing done, so I wrote an article for the newspaper. And then she says, that was pretty good. Why don't you write another one? And so I wrote another one. And then she says, that was pretty good. Why don't you join my journalism class? I said, I've never done that before. She said, that's why you call it growth. You do something you've never done before. You push the envelope. You take the risk. And you do it because somebody else notices something in you. You don't see it, but they do. And so on the faith that they kind of see more than you because they're older than you and they're more experienced, or at least they're experienced in something else that you're not, you do it. And so I did. And so I joined the journalism class of Bev Tates, now Bev Matiko, and she's now at Andrews University in Michigan right now. And I joined her class and I learned how to be a journalist. And I write all kinds of articles. And then for the whole year in college. And then the editor of the newspaper was leaving his job as the editor, and I was asked to be the new editor. And I said to Bev Matiko, I've never done that before. I've never been an editor of a newspaper before. And she said, that's why they call it growth. You do something you've never done before. But you do it because other people see that you're good at something and they want you to grow. And so you try something you've never tried before, but it's related to that talent, that little seed of a talent that's going to grow. And so with the help of my friends, one of whom became my wife, I became the editor of the newspaper. And it was hard work, but it was the best year of my life. Well, back then it was the best year of my life. It was exhilarating. It was fulfilling. And I remember one day I was sleeping in history class. I was sitting at my desk, like everybody else was around me. They're listening to Dr. Lavas. And I only say that because some of you might know him. And I was sleeping, and I woke up. And I woke up not knowing what was around me, except I was thinking the reason why I was sleeping, because I never got any sleep the whole night. Why? Because I was doing something for the newspaper to get the stuff in at the last minute. So it's the current news. So I did not get 1 ounce of sleep at all. And then so in my mind's eye, I'm sitting there, I'm going through a check mark. Did I get the PMTs done, the photomechanical transfers for the photographs? Yes. Did I get the distribution done? Did I get the articles done? Did I get this? Did I get permissions? Did I get funding? All that stuff. And I'm going through my checklist, and I had done it all. And I'm thinking, this is a real good feeling. The newspaper is going to be printed right now. It's going to come out in a day or two, and it's going to be distributed to all over the campus and all over Lacombe, and some will get sent around to all around Canada. And I'm thinking, I made a difference. I feel happy. And I thought back to that parable. That's just what the master said. When you put your talents to use, you're going to grow. And it's going to contribute to your sense of confidence, your sense of happiness, your sense of satisfaction. While I was doing that, being distracted by this good work, I was not at all tempted to go astray with temptations. Because idle hands are a devil's workshop. You've heard this before. I was focused. I was happy. I was interviewing students. I was actually training other students to be writers and all that. I was doing that. And it felt good. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to eat junk food. I need my brain to be working so I can do a good job. And it helped me to stay healthier because I had a purpose in life. Do you see what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying here. that we need to have this. And so the happiness that we have depends on the use we make of our talents. And so here's a graph. I put it in a graph form. That green represents the amount of our talent usage. And the red represents joy. So watch. The more you use your talents, remember you can look on page 13 of your workbook, figure out what they are. The greater the joy you will have. And the greater the joy you have, the less you need to give in to cravings. You see? The more you use your talents, even more joy you will have. And so this is kind of what we're saying. So you now become an influencer. You now become a blesser of other people because you have acknowledged that you've been blessed. And now your job is to help other people discover their calling. As a parent, that's your job for your children, to help them discover their calling. As a teacher, that's your job for your students, help them discover their calling. And as an older brother, older sister, or just someone who influences other people, help other people discover their calling. Tell them what they're good at. And that will help them to grow and make the world a better place. And it will lessen disease in the end. So help people discover their purpose. So what is your talent? Because when you find out what it is, you'll be your own version of Superman. Have any questions or thoughts or doubts or hesitations or confusions? Because I'm going to close in 1 minute. This is the first step to conquering cravings. Notice I didn't talk a lot about cravings in the last half hour. It's because when you're focused on something else, the cravings seem to go down. Focus on the positive, and those cravings kind of bounce off. The temptations kind of dissipate a little bit. And so any thoughts or questions or doubts or comments? If not, I'm going to pray for you. And I'm going to pray that tonight, if you don't know it already, you're going to start a journey that's going to help you know what your strengths are, what your talents are, and how you can use them, no matter how young or old you are, because you've been blessed with capabilities, and a lot of you don't even know that you have them, but other people know. Ask other people who love you, what are your talents? What are your gifts? And then you use them. See where you lead. And then someday you'll be a blessing to me too. So let me pray for you. Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you for your love. Thank you for stories like this about the talents. Is it really true that if we found out what our talents are and our gifts, and when we use them, it creates happiness? Lord, help us to experiment with that just to see. Maybe even starting tonight or tomorrow. Lord, I thank you for this psychological, emotional component of living life with full power. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Take care, everybody. We'll see you Tuesday at 7 o'clock.